Hi, it's Todd of Tod's Workshop and Tod Cutler here, and today we're going to talk about this, the bushcraft survival crossbow. And it really is just made with a knife, a couple of knives, some string, the hedgerows around here, and my knowledge about crossbows, because I make them for a living. So I thought I'd design the simplest one that I possibly could that anyone can make just using a knife. And I've wanted to do this for years because I don't know if you can do this out of greenwood, so I thought I'd give it a go. And the other reason, it just seemed like the perfect opportunity just to show the world the new Tod Cutler bushcraft knives that I'm making. So we have these here. Thought I'd try them out on this. Let's go and make something. Come on. Now, it's going to be suitable for shooting birds out of trees, fish in the river, small game, whatever. It's not going to be amazingly powerful, but it is going to be a crossbow that you can make, and I'm going to show you how to do it. So the first thing is, we're going to go select our timber. I'm going to explain what I'm looking for and why I'm looking for that shape. What I've found on the riverbank here is an ash sapling. It's about 50mm round here, 2 inches, something like that. Plenty of wood up above, so some of that will probably go to make the bow. But importantly, this bit here with a nice fork in it, and straight enough at this point, is going to form the stock. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take it down, trim off the branches, and we're going to have a look what we've got. Just going to clear a bit of the area here because there's a lot of brambles and stuff I don't want to hit my knuckles on. Let's take this sapling down. So I've just felled the sapling, and the piece that we actually really want right now for the stock is here and this fork. So I've taken off the thinner branch. This thicker branch here, actually, I think all the way down, it might end up forming the bow for our actual crossbow. So I'm going to drag it back to base now and cut off this section quite carefully, because all we need is about 5 centimeters, 2 inches, just to cup the bow itself in this fork here. The rest of it we don't need. This section here, all the way down, is going to form the stock of the crossbow. So it does bend down a little bit, bellies down to the bottom, but not out to the side. So straight from the end here through the fork is pretty much a straight line, which is what we're looking for. But then here, I'm going to trim this down a bit. We only need, like I say, 2 inches, 5 centimeters. And I'm going to trim this here, and this section here, actually, I think is going to be good enough for our bow. And this is going to form the stock of our crossbow now. But we have to put it to one side because actually I've got no idea where to lay out the trigger system or any of the rest of it without the bow itself. So it's the bow we have to make next. I'm now going to teach you how to turn this horrible warty old stick into a bow. It's never going to be beautiful, I'm not going to pretend that. But we are going to do it relatively quickly. We're going to do a lot of the bulk work, the heavy work with the camp knife that I sell. But then we're going to move on to the finer knives. But what you're really trying to do is to turn that into a smooth curve when it's got a string on it. When it's pulled back a bit more, you want it in a smooth curve, but a different curve obviously. And when you pull it back all the way, you still want it to be smooth. No flat spots, no elbows as they're called, where the bow just turns around, because that's going to be weak spots. But what you need to think about first of all is that the bow will start thicker in the middle and taper towards the ends. I can't tell you what size to do that, but what I'm going to do now is I'm just going to take the camp knife and thin it down that way. Not on the front, you don't want to break through the growth rings on the front, but on the belly, as it's called, the inside of the bow, the bit that's nearest you when it's mounted, I'm going to start thinning that down, and I'm going to thin it down a little bit as if you looked at it from the front as well. So I'm going to thin it down that way, taking the edges off a bit. But the important thing to remember as well, this is a survival situation. I need the crossbow in 3 hours, 4 hours time. But if you had the time to leave this to season, you will end up with a better bow. So what you can do is make this now, that's fine, then retiller it again, maybe in 2 or 3 weeks, because by that point, a lot of the weight will have evaporated, the water will have gone, and the bow will work much, much better. But this will work good enough for today. I've thinned that down, so you can see it starts thicker in the middle, getting thinner at the edges. I'm now going to take off these little stumps from the old branches, but not completely. You don't want to get them completely smooth, because actually that will interrupt the grain structure, the growth rings of the tree, because they come up towards that, and that will weaken it. So just crop them off, but not all the way. So what you're not looking for is beautifully smooth. A little bit lumpy is just fine. What I'm going to do now is thin this bow in that orientation. I'm going to actually thin it from the top to bottom, if you like, as well as the front to back. So I'm going to leave it full thickness, just clean it up a little bit in the middle here, and then just bring it down as I come towards the tips. Now I'm doing a lot of the heavy cutting here with this camp knife, but actually if you're less confident, use smaller knives, because you don't want to go too deep, because that will just mess up your next processes when you're trying to, well, establish the most powerful bow you can. Right, well I have something that's beginning to look like a bow now, but I'm quite impatient to know if it is going to be a bow. So I'm just going to put the end here on the log, I'm going to hold it at the tip here, just push in the middle and just get a feel. And I can tell you now, it's flexing, but it's also actually really quite powerful. More powerful than I want to do today. So I'm going to reduce the strength of this immediately now, before I even begin to try and work it down as a bow. And I'm going to do that by reducing the thickness of the bow. So I'm going to turn it more into a flat bow, a flatter bow than it is now. It's an easier bow to make. It's more reliable, it's a bit less efficient. But what it means in a survival situation is this afternoon, you will have a bow that works. And tomorrow, after you've got your bow that works, then you can think about making a really nice one. But today, we're going to get you out of trouble. And a flat bow is the way to go with that. So I'm just going to thin this down a bit more, and then just begin to get a bit of a feel for how it bends. Always be a bit careful though when you're thinning a bow. It takes a lot less wood than you think being removed to weaken it beyond use. So always keep going back and trying it. See how you feel about it. It's a good way to learn as well, just keeping in touch with the process you're doing, not just cutting away blindly. Right. Now I can feel that flexing, but the problem is I don't know where, and I don't know how much, and I don't know if any of it's a problem. So I have to make a tillering stick. I know I'm on the way to making a bow, but I don't want to be on the way and then break it. I want a bow that works. So what a tillering stick is, it allows me to put a string on here, to pull it back, you know, maybe this far, something like that, and to have a look at the curve of the bow and to see if any bits are bending more or less than others. It's always going to be a bit tricky because this bow itself is a bit lumpy, but you'll get a good idea. So the next up, tillering stick. Here's our bow on the tillering stick right at the beginning of the process. It really doesn't look like much at the moment, but I'm just getting used to how it looks really, because I'm going to start to bend it and I've got to try and work out the difference between now and when it starts to bend. So what I can tell you is this section here, it looks a little bit stiff to me. But is that part of the wood itself, because the wood's quite bendy, or is that the bow that I'm trying to create? So that's really what I've got to get used to. So I'm going to look at that, I'm now going to move it to the next notch and just stand back and look at it from a distance and see how I feel about it. And actually I'm beginning to get some tension on it, but I can tell you, and it's probably no surprise to you there, that it's bending here and it's not really bending here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take away some material here. But if I go too far, too fast, I just ruin my bow. And that's it, it's gone. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to scrape the belly of this with a knife. So I'll show you what I mean by scraping, because it's a really good, slow way to make sure you end up with a bow and not a matchstick. The first thing to do is to take the string off. The temptation is not to, because you'll work faster. But actually, if you do that and you cut your string, you've got problems again. So it's always good to be slow and measured and considered when you're making a bow. Now, if I cut away this wood, I need to be really confident I'm not cutting away too much. So what I'm going to do now is I'm not going to cut it, I'm going to scrape it. And this is the way you make bows in the workshop as well. So I just take my blade, hold it vertical, and I can just scrape away, and you can see the fluff that I'm removing. And what that does is it removes wood, and that's fine, but it does it slowly. And you need to be slow. You go too fast and it's all over. I'm going to put the string back on now, then we'll put it back on the tiller and we'll have a look and see where the next round of changes need to be. Now what I can tell from looking at that is there is still what's called a hinge point here. I've removed some, I need to remove more. But this area here is also moving and bending a little bit, so that's quite good. But this is my problem area, so I'm going to come back to that. So I'm going to mark it with my charcoal here and here, and that means that now I'm going to work between those two places, just scraping away, not going straight up all the time. If I do that, I'll end up with ridges. So I'm going across and then across that way also, and that way I won't end up with the ridges, but I will end up with a nice steady removal of wood. So the bow is back on the tiller now, and it really is approaching the end of the process. So I've marked, I've scraped, I've pulled it down, I've flexed it and looked at it, but just have a watch of this. That side flexing much nicer than that one, which you'd probably expect because the piece of wood is cleaner and straighter. But have a look. Well, this side here is clearly flexing a lot nicer than that side. I could probably go further. If it was dry wood, seasoned wood, I'd definitely go further. Green wood, it's just not so nice to use. But this isn't about emergency, it's not about fabulousness. But it is drawing back to around about a foot, 30 centimetres at the moment. I'd like to take it just a little bit more, so I'm going to work on it a bit more, see if we can do that, and then we'll lay out the stock. This log is going to form the basis of our stock. So the first thing I've got to do is just carve out at the front end here a nice socket that is going to fit our bow, you know, relatively securely. We're going to lash it on as well, so it doesn't have to be amazing, but it wants to seat in there flat and secure. So we're going to cut it in now. So nearly there. I'm just going to square that up slightly. As you can see, just a little way to go. I've carved the socket, and there you can see. And the bow fits really quite nicely into it actually. So I put a centre mark on the bow as well. So you can see it's actually, you know, well seated in there. But that's not going to be enough, because if we then shoot this bow, the bow will actually go flying forward. So we're going to put some cords over it at that point, and so we need a little hook section here that the cords are going to fit under. So I'm just going to batten a slot in there now, and then dress it back in with a bushcraft knife, which is a bit finer than the field knife I've been using. Now, as you can see, there's a little bit of effectively an undercut when the cord comes around here, but not a great deal. So I'm going to hollow that around under, and that will make it much more secure for the cordage. So I'm going to take the bushcraft knife again and just carefully scallop under that lip. So we have our notch cut now for our cord. And that's going to be used to hold the bow down into the socket. So we simply have a loop of cord with a knot in it. Just pop it over. The bow goes into the socket, and this cord now, under the string there, you should be able to work it out, but it goes into the notch over the top. And now what I'm going to do is using, well, what I know of as a Spanish windlass, a stick, and I'm just going to twist it up. And that will now bring the whole thing nice and tight. And it's important to stop the bow moving between shots, because that's going to affect your accuracy if it's different each time you use it. So this way it should be much the same as it was last time, because the bow will be in the same place. And actually you can then just push that peg around and it will stay where it is. But the bow itself now is nice and secure. It's a little wobbly, but you'd expect that. But what it won't do is twist, it won't slide from side to side. We have the bow in position now, and of course we have the tillering stick from earlier, so we know, absolutely know from the tillering stick how far back we should mark our trigger. So if we line that up, there we are. Just going to go back a bit further than this notch here, and there we have it. So just here. So that little cut mark there is where we're going to put the trigger. I have a really good positive mark now. That's where the trigger is going to be. It's where the string's going to go. But the first thing I need to do, if you look at that, it's curving downwards. What I want, in fact, is it to be curving the other way, because I want to be able to push the bolt at the beginning of its travel, and then for it to be free, and just a little register at the front here. So I'll put some little teeth or something at the front here. So all of this, in fact, needs to be scooped out. So the first thing I'm going to do now is bring that out. Back on a nice solid heavy knife for this, and we'll scallop it out. So here we have it. I've hollowed it out. So as you can see, the string now is going to pass from here going forwards. It's not going to rub on this, which is good because it means less friction, because that is going to make quite a difference. It's not going to be a very powerful bow with a greenwood bow. But the other thing is, putting a long straight bolt groove in really would be difficult here. So what I'm going to do is just cut a notch in at the back, a V-notch, and another one at the front, and that way the bolt will be perfectly aligned every time. I don't have to worry about skidding it across a flat deck or a deck even that's going up that way. So I'm just going to carve those grooves in now, and then we'll go on to the next stage. So I'm looking to carve a groove that, you know, an arrow the size of my little finger or a bit smaller would fit into. So that rises now, so I just need to put my groove into the last centimetre or 2 centimetres or so. So I've got a groove cut front and back now, and there's nothing in between that's going to interfere. You can see that by looking down the length of those 2 grooves. They line up nicely. There's nothing sticking up. That's going to work perfectly now as the top deck of a crossbow. Our crossbow is now complete from the trigger forward. So I've got our 2 notches there for the bolt. I've got hollow, so there's going to be nothing that interferes with the bolt. The socket that fits the bow on, everything, it's all done. But the trigger here now is going to be quite simply just a lever you push down on. You push down and it pushes the string out of that notch and onto the back of the bolt. So I need the thickness of the lever and, you know, enough of the string. So I need to take that notch down further now, and then I want to flatten it off so I've got a nice flat level area in which to work the trigger. Just smoothing off the notch where the crossbow string is going to land. So it comes back, drops into there, and then we end up with a little lever and a pivot, and you push down and it pushes the string out of the notch. It goes forward. Brilliant. So what we're going to do now is we're going to cut a groove across here. I'm going to split off a section of log so I can get a thin plank effectively, and I'm going to cut a groove across that, put a pin between them, and then we'll be able to get that rocking seesaw motion. So I've cut a groove across the stock there, and I'm going to do the same on my wooden plate, and then we're going to put just a twig between the 2, and it should seesaw. Now we could have used a curved trigger bar, and it would have swept upwards, and it could rock back, and all would be lovely. But they tend to be a bit harder to carve, so I went for the most time-efficient way, which is just split off a piece here. But what it does mean is I should get a lovely seesaw action. But I can't, because right here the back of the trigger is hitting the stock. So like I said, the most time efficient thing, mark it, put a big batten cut in with the camp knife, chamfer that down, and the whole lot will rock up. So I'll do that now. Nothing very exciting, but is very necessary. Now here we have the recess now for the back of the trigger bar. So we have our handy twig. We'll put that in. So that's basically the pivot of the seesaw. We have our flat little plank. The string, of course, comes here. And now you can see plenty of room at the back. You can push down and it rocks up and pushes the string out the notch. Now you might think that I've invented this, but actually that is a historical system from a 1,000-year-old crossbow that was dug up in southern France in a lake. So the system does work. It really does work. So I'm now going to just clean up the edges of this plank here, square them off a little bit, and then it's really dead simple. We're just going to put a bit of a groove in the top, a bit of a groove in the bottom, tie a cord tightly around the whole thing, and that will just keep the pivot bar in place, and everything will then be where it needs to be. The trigger will just stay whole. So it won't be lots of pieces, just with a piece of string. Okay, so that's now the same width as the stock. So what I'm going to do now is carve a groove under that for the string to go in. I'm going to do the same over the top here, and then we'll tie the whole thing together and make sure that it's going to, well, work, that the articulation is correct. Now you can go as deep as you want really here, because it's not being stressed like the bow was being stressed. So I put a groove now all the way round, about 6 mil, 1/4 of an inch deep, something like that. And I'm going to do the same on the lever at the top, and then we'll try it with a bit of cord and see what happens. Excellent. So our trigger fits. Now what we're going to do is just cut our little twig here, but I'm not going to cut it to the same width as the stock. I'm actually going to leave about 3/4 of an inch, 20 millimeters out on each side, which I'm going to sort of skin down a little bit, so it's almost just the bark. But what it means is when the cord goes over it, it'll help to hold it all in place, help to stop it getting lost, really. Nice. There we are. That. So what it means is that those ends now will fold down and get held by the cordage. That sits on top, and we'll tie the whole thing together. So we now have our slightly shaped trigger, our pivot bar, we're putting it in, and that should, as you can see there, work perfectly. I'm just going to tie it into place. So I've got some more cordage. Here we go. Yeah, so that works. Good. So what we have now is a secure trigger that doesn't want to fall out. Now it's not sprung loaded, but in fact, or at least it looks like it isn't, it is. Because when the string goes in, it'll pop it down. So you know what's coming next? It's the last thing to do, to put the bow on it, see if it actually works. Here goes. Here's our loop from before. Nice mark, centre mark on there. That goes over. And now for the Spanish windlass. So the Spanish windlass is all done nice and tight. Now you want it secure because of course the last thing you want is for that to decide it's going to suddenly undo the moment you've sneaked up on something. Everything else is ready to go. So I'm going to back the camera off and we'll have a look, make sure it works. Well, time to pray to the gods of bushcraft, because here we go. So a foot on the inside of the bow, just pull the string back, drop it into the notch. That's it. All looks good so far. Bolt on top and just hold it down with your thumb and shoot. Brilliant, absolutely brilliant. The darn thing actually works. It really actually works. There you have it, the bushcraft survival hedgerow crossbow. Right, let's make some more arrows and we'll have a go with it and see what we can do. Gonna make some arrows now. Now, the first one I shot was actually a sapling, a little tiny straight sapling that I found. It's pretty hard to find them like that, but you can always fire straighten them. I haven't got time for that today. But we have bamboo here, and what I'm looking for is about 50, 60 centimetres, so 20, 24 inches long. I'm not putting flights on them. Now what that means is that they're not going to fly brilliantly. They are going to tumble, but out to about 6 or 7 metres, so bird roosting in a tree, they're going to go straight enough. So they will be absolutely fine for what we're doing. Fish in the river, no problem at all. If you want to put flights on it, that gets a bit more complicated. It's another video, I'm sure, but not today. Pulling back into the notch. This is never going to be a super powerful bow. It can't be because of the green wood, but it will keep you going until some of your new wood seasons. And then do exactly the same thing, same techniques, but make a bow with dry wood. Until then, this will keep the hunger from the door. Good luck. Good stuff. I'm just by the river here, and there's plenty of people all over the world who go crossbow fishing. So, good enough for them, good enough for me. Right, let's go again. And then the last of them. So, for this application, it certainly would work. That would have got him. And there you have it, the bushcraft survival crossbow. Available in camo and white, made only with Tod Cutler knives, some knowledge and the local woods. Thank you very much.